The Baltimore Ravens are facing major heat after exposing the fact that they never had a zero tolerance policy in the first place. We talk about that. Justin Tucker and his wife speaking out on his situation and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Purple Friday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen of the day. Free and available all podcasting platforms, video form on YouTube. You can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We go live after every single Ravens game, every single piece of Ravens big news. We sometimes have some bonus episodes on the weekend. If you're looking for daily Ravens coverage, be sure you keep it locked in here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Qadry Ismail, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, is with us here for a little Purple Friday action. And it was crazy to think we're just creeping up on March, creeping up on free agency, combine in full swing. The NFL is a year-long extravaganza, despite the season only being a couple of months, and we are just in the thick of the offseason now.
It is amazing to me how quickly time flies. It waits for no one. And the machine that is the NFL, that I got a chance to sit back, chill out with Roger Goodell at the playoff game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. And you could just see where he's like, yeah, this is what we do. And so for, stadium deals, off-season work of what that looks like, to how free agency, to teams with salary cap issues or non-issues, to new coaching staff, new general managers. Like, it's just a constant something. And that something is what we seem to love and enjoy. And that's why we're here on Locked On Ravens.
That's why we're talking about it, because we love this football team and we love the city of Baltimore and we want this team to win. Want to win every single season. Now, hasn't worked out that way. 2 championships still. You have one of those Super Bowl rings too for Baltimore. Not a bad deal considering the team started off in 96. But regardless, this is the time where you improve your team. You can get better. You can add through free agency, the draft, maybe a trade or two. When the salary cap will get to that, we got that number, and it has gone up. It continues to go up with all those things you mentioned, TV deals, etc. But there are a couple of things that we are going to talk about here first. Obviously, the Justin Tucker situation has been at the forefront of everybody's minds, and as allegations and different points of the story continue to come out, it just continues to be an ever-evolving situation. John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta were asked a lot about that during their combine press conferences on Tuesday. And after the fact, Kyle Goon of the Baltimore Banner wrote an article on this. After the fact, the Ravens ended up putting up a statement to local media outlets saying, quote, "The Ravens do not have a defined written zero tolerance policy. Each situation stands on its own. Actions will be determined after the facts are known." And so from a grand scheme of things, like that policy clarification, and Kyle notes it here, that's not unreasonable in and of itself. But the thing is, it feels like the Ravens have been operating under that, I don't want to call it a disguise, but they've been operating under the fact that, yeah, we might have something like this. And John Harbaugh even went as far as, talking about the Deshaun Watson situation back last year, was like, he said, quote, "I respect what Steve Bisciotti's created here. Dick Cass, really almost 10 years ago, basically were kind of zero tolerance." And so him actively saying that and being like, yeah, I'm glad this is a thing and we have that kind of policy here. People are like, well, wait a second. Now there's actually not a policy and there's never been a policy. And obviously you can go back to the whole Ray Rice situation all those years ago and kind of how this situation has continued to evolve over the years. But during his answer to the zero tolerance policy question on Tuesday morning, Eric DeCosta said, "I really can't tell you because we look at every case differently, and that's the facts in every single case." So kind of a situation where I feel like the overall response queue has been, I guess, disappointment is what I've kind of gathered from a lot of people of people have been operating under the assumption that, yeah, the Ravens have been this zero tolerance policy organization, when in reality that apparently has never been the case.
I honestly think, as I'm looking on it, the NFL has always had the policy of it isn't about being equal. It's about being fair. It isn't about every case is the same. It's about what can you do for me? I think what we're seeing is that Justin Tucker has had such a huge resume with the Baltimore Ravens as their kicker, one of, if not the greatest kickers of all time, has won so many clutch games, have done it just at the highest level. And really, I think Justin has changed the way in which kicking has become the norm past that 50, 52, 55-yard kick in all types of conditions. And you see way more of the pure straight kick now than ever. Why am I saying all that? Because if he was a sucky kicker and just a mid-level dude, you would not be seeing him on the team. Period. End of discussion. Therefore, it's not a zero tolerance policy. It's on a case-by-case basis. I think what we saw with John Harbaugh was that, yeah, we're seeing what Deshaun Watson did. And now that Deshaun Watson is not in my peripheral, I don't necessarily have to coach him. I don't have to be, a part of those decisions and whatever. And the NFL did make it quite clear what was what with him. Of course, it's easy to say it with, oh, we got zero tolerance policy. Oh, I'm glad that's in place. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. It's easy to say those things. But when it's your own guy and when he has that resume, you kind of, dang it. All right, well, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let it all just settle in. So that's just how the NFL works, case-by-case basis. But I think what John said before, and, the level that we're trying to play lawyer in the court of public opinion, he's not going to win it, and the optics don't look good for the Ravens, but so be it.
And the other part of John Harbaugh's answer, just for context of what he indicated on Deshaun Watson and that whole situation, said when we draft players and we sign them as free agents, we just haven't dealt with it. That's Steve's decision. I'm glad that we have that policy. And also said that you got to know the truth. You got to try to understand the circumstances, but we've stayed away from that particular situation when we draft players and we sign them as free agents. But then, as Kyle notes in his article here, Terrell Suggs had multiple accusations over the course of his career with the Ravens. Even, he mentions Dalvin Cook, who had an active legal dispute with an ex-girlfriend at the time the Ravens signed him, and that ended up being settled back in April. But still, there have been other situations. But I just think the disconnect from what John Harbaugh has, is particularly in that particular answer of, like, he brings up the zero tolerance thing. But then now, I think you're exactly right, Q. Now that the Ravens are dealing with a situation actively like this, it's easy to look on from beyond and say, oh, well, yeah, we don't do that. We have a zero tolerance policy. But when it's happening to you in the moment, all of a sudden you're under that microscope and people start to dig even further. And Kyle even notes in his article, he's asked about the tolerance policy before, and they never really corrected it on the record. And we're like, so it feels like they were wishy-washy on it. And almost like, I think the perception I've gotten from fans, from what I've seen on social media, is like, were they trying to act like they were this model zero tolerance organization for years because no one checked them on it? And they're like, oh, well, we have the reputation. Now we're just going to kind of lean into it. But now that that situation has happened, they have to answer for the policy that, again, the Ravens have now said is not directly in their team code.
Yeah, that's where, okay, y'all got to do the damage control. I know that they're going to see all the different articles. I know they're going to look at public opinion. I know that Steve Bisciotti holds the organization as far as its character and its influence over, the community at large. He holds it to a high standard. And so I think it's easy for them to say they're going after a free agent, but then, there's some dirty laundry. And it's easy to be like, no, Steve Bisciotti is the guy and saying no. But then when it is, yes, like a scenario of Terrell Suggs, and there have been some others that, are not necessarily public. You kind of shift it a little bit. And that's the nature. It's not about being equal. It's about being fair. And fair means, in their eyes, it's a subjective thing. Like, it's like, all right, well, what exactly is going on here? And how does that all look for, in that particular case, Terrell Suggs, that particular case, the optics of Ray Rice, and, the brutality of the video / what is what when it comes to Justin Tucker. And I think that's why they have that for them, their organization, the fluidity of the zero tolerance policy in their scope of defining it.
Right. That I 100% hear you. And one of the things here is Kyle did not pull any punches on the Ravens organization for whether you want to call it hiding or not correcting or whatever you want to, spin it off to be in terms of what the Ravens did here or were actively doing. Kyle says right before stepping off the combine podium, notably before the team issued his clarification, Harbaugh was asked if he regretted saying the team had a zero tolerance policy 3 years ago. Absolutely not, he said. And then Kyle goes on to say the Ravens' biggest regret shouldn't be what Harbaugh said. It should be the years it took them to actually tell the truth. And that, to me, I feel like is the perception of the fan base right now. It is, well, if this policy never existed in the first place and you are actively, like for John Harbaugh, going out of your way to say, hey, we're kind of a zero tolerance policy organization. And I'm glad we have that in effect, but it never was a thing. And it is on a case-by-case basis, and the NFL does their investigations, and that clearly is what Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh said that they are waiting for. It wouldn't have been a problem if the Ravens was like, yeah, actually, we don't have that policy. And that was what John Harbaugh had said 3 years ago or any of that. But it just feels like to a lot of people, they were operating under the guise of, oh, we are actually this organization that really takes this in a situation. We don't want to bring those guys in. We have this policy and we stick to it. When really it is that case-by-case basis. And again, what Kyle said, it's not like that in itself is like not unique throughout the NFL. Like, honestly, a lot of NFL teams operate that way, case-by-case basis, and they wait for the facts and whatever. But I think it's the illusion that the Ravens were I guess, portraying over these last handful of seasons. And even in an article, because this is multiple outlets have written on this, The Ringer put out an article, and the paragraph here says it's not entirely clear when the Ravens adopted the policy or whether they ever truly did. And while Ozzie Newsome did say after releasing Ray Rice, it will be tough to sign a player with that in their background, then Dick Cass, the president at the time, said that it wasn't a zero tolerance policy at all, just the following offseason. So it's like they've been going back and forth on it. People have been wondering, well, which is it? Is it the zero tolerance policy or is there nothing there? It seemed like we never got clarification until a situation was again staring them right in the face. And I think that's where the disconnect does come from.
And I will say this, though, too. You're trying to give the player the benefit of the doubt. And yes, something comes out. It's like, oh, that's it. You're gone. So I think that's what Dick Cass, and at that time was trying to kind of look at it and say, look, let's see it, let's examine it, and let's understand it. Zero tolerance, I guess, in the public's perception, maybe in the world of like, you don't know what's really going on behind the scenes. You don't know the full picture. And that means that as soon as anything, the slightest bit that looks bad, you're just gone. That's it. It's over. End of discussion. And I don't think that that's fair either. Like, I think that what's just is just. I think that, those terms that John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta used, and if John publicly said it, unfortunately, those words now are going to be used, the syntax and semantics and context of them are going to be used accordingly when it comes to situations like this. And it's going to be up to them to be even more defined and clarifying what is a personal conduct that you're willing to accept. And if the guy is found guilty, what personal conduct are you still willing to accept compared to if a person, has something really egregious that you just say, hey, we don't need evidence. We just know that that is egregious, and you're gone from the team. That's the meeting that they will have, and they'll have to get into, and they'll have to discuss amongst themselves to come up with the right wording / formula of how they want to view themselves and the Ravens organization.
And as I said, it's an ever evolving situation, and that's where it is. And even Chris Canty talked about this on his show a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, you want due process, you want, everything to go and play out that way. That's fine. But the Ravens have to make decisions of like, is this essentially, he said, worth it for them to have this distraction on the team, or should they move on? And Chris Canty did mention, well, if you have a zero tolerance policy, you shouldn't be on the team. Well, we now know the Ravens do not have a zero tolerance policy. So Baltimore taking heat for that whole situation. But Justin Tucker and his wife, they did speak out on the situation in an article to Outkick. So coming up, we'll review what he had to say and also just dive into the kicker position in general, what it could look like on the field post Justin Tucker. So we should have stayed tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get internet than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets through the game. So even if you miss opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail, still talking with you here on this Purple Friday. We got the offseason in full swing. We got everything going on here. Free agency coming up really, really soon. But Q, we got to continue on the Justin Tucker conversation because a big article came out from Outkick. Justin Tucker, his first public comments to the media. He put a statement out when this all first came out, but his first public comments to the media. I'll just read the statement out. His wife had something to say as well, so I'll talk about that. There was some other evidence that was presented here. And then after that, I just want to dive into the position in general because there's going to be life without Justin Tucker one way or the other, whether it be this year, next year, whatever it may be. The Ravens have made it clear that they are going to be looking at kicker, and that was going to be the case regardless of the allegations that have been brought upon Justin Tucker. So the statement, it's a decently long one, so bear with me here. From the moment I first arrived in Baltimore in 2012, I felt embraced and supported by this amazing community, which I have come to love so much. Both on and off the football field, I have strived to reciprocate the love and support through hard work and dedication to my sport. I have sought to treat everyone with kindness, dignity, and respect, and to set that type of positive example that makes my family proud to call me a father, husband, and friend, and encourages members of this community to be proud to call me one of their own. It is with all that in mind that the allegations against me are so shocking and heartbreaking. I maintain I did not act inappropriately at any point before, during, or after a professional bodywork treatment session, nor have I ever been told I am unwelcome at any massage therapy provider. These claims are simply not true. Throughout the last 4 weeks, I have spent countless hours replaying every interaction I have had with the bodywork professionals over the last 13 years. I can assure whoever is reading this that I have never intended to disrespect anyone, cross any boundary, or make anyone feel uncomfortable in any way whatsoever. It devastates me to know that anyone I have worked with would not have felt respected and valued as a professional, but more importantly, as a person, and anyone who has felt otherwise, I am sorry. I want you to know I'm committed to ensuring that everyone I interact with continues to feel that I respect them and care about them as a human being. Since I began working as a professional athlete, I came to recognize the importance of receiving consistent professional body work. By investing my time and resources to restorative body work with licensed therapists at respected places of business and at my home, during the times where I'm most active as a football player, I've experienced considerable health and athletic performance benefits. Physical therapy and massage therapy are a larger part of why I've been consistently healthy and available during the football season. In fact, both my wife and I continue to count so many of these professionals as our friends. I absolutely respect the massage therapy profession and more so the individuals who work as massage therapists. So that's what Justin Tucker had to say. Justin Tucker's wife has responded saying the false allegations against Justin have caused so much hurt to our family. I believe my husband and I love and support him. There have been multiple other documents. There were 2 sworn declarations from previous owners of the Ritz-Carlton Spa, a bunch coming out about the situation. And that's what I'm saying, Q. It's ever evolving. It just is what it is. We don't know what's going to come out tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day after that. But the Ravens will have decisions to make, including what they want to do with their kicker position, whether they believe Tucker is the right option for them moving forward with all the allegations, if they believe that this is too much and they don't tolerate any of this, due process playing out. There are so many different avenues that this could go. But one avenue the Ravens are exploring is the kicker position in general. John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, especially, John Harbaugh said that they were going to be looking at kickers even before all this stuff came out. With the way Justin Tucker started the year, there was always going to be a question about when was Justin Tucker's time in Baltimore coming to an end. Let's just say that they decide that the findings of the NFL aren't as significant as they thought and nothing comes of it, and they decide to keep Justin Tucker on the roster. Do you feel like that there's going to be serious competition in that case for the kicker position in Baltimore next year?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because with the kicker, the only way you really know for a fact, and this is such a interesting take, but one that I've talked to other coaches and they're like, yeah, you're kind of right about that. We, look at a kicker and they have to under pressure do it. What is under pressure? In game moments, not in practice moments. Practice moments, sure. But in game moments is what really just seals it. Like, okay, cool, we trust you. Let's go. Those in practice moments, like, yeah, you're good. But until you do it in game, doesn't count. When you look at Justin Tucker, my God, man, that dude, he just, every time there was some level of whatever competition, he would just ace him because in practice, that other kicker just wasn't as good as Justin Tucker, and you could just feel the pressure on it. To the point when he got into the game, it was just like, yeah, I'm Justin Tucker, you're not. Get out of the way. This time around, it'll be interesting to see because we know what he went through as far as I'm sure the banner when they first approached him and brought out the article, I'm sure in his mind it probably affected his game. But he corrected it right around, their bye week, and he was able to kind of get back on, track and be the Justin that we know. But is that sample size large enough to say, man, he's fully on back? And, I think it'd be foolish of the, team to not really take a more of a competition competitive look by bringing in another kicker. So we'll see what it all unfolds and what it all looks like. But that dude better be ready because, he's got some big, pressure shoes, if you will, to fill. And I think that's, part of the challenge of replacing the legend of Justin Tucker.
Yeah, we know on the field, Justin has been absolutely incredible for the team over the course of his career. But obviously, let's just assume they keep him on the roster. We'll see how it plays out. But in this situation, we assume that they will. Well, if that's the case, then we've seen Q over the years, the Ravens bring in just a camp body kicker. Say, okay, we're going to take some pressure off of Justin during the preseason. He's not going to kick as much, just keeping him fresh for the year. They honestly, if we're being completely honest about the situation, started doing that with Jordan Stout late in the year by putting Stout on kickoffs and letting Justin Tucker kind of do his thing. And that was the situation with how the dynamic between Stout and Tucker changed over the year. And I think that, you talk about him coming into his own after the bye week. I think that might be part of the reason why. And there were probably a couple other factors as well. But it seems like if Tucker's on the roster next year, there will be a legit, hey, this guy is not just a camp body type of deal. Even if Tucker's the guy for them next season, you probably keep that other guy on the practice squad. And in the event of Tucker reverting back to first half of 2024 Tucker, you at least have an option. It's part of the reason why you and IQ talked about this during the year of replacing Justin Tucker midseason is there was no one else on the market. You're talking about guys who are free agents for a reason, and those guys would not come in. You would have just taken your chances with Tucker turning it around, which he ended up doing. But if Tucker does revert back to that old form of 2024 first half, it's okay, at least you have another option on the practice squad to call up. With the Ravens having 11 draft picks, that's a lot of draft picks. I wouldn't be shocked if they spent their second to last draft pick or last draft pick, or even maybe earlier based off of some trends we've seen on a kicker, because there are some guys in this class that could maybe come in and replace Justin Tucker, whether it is this year or maybe a year down the line.
Yeah, you better, again, like we're talking it from the football aspect of things, that, his statement is true, and, his legal issues are non-existent. They're in the rearview mirror. That's the question of the matter. But then when you look at it, if it comes out the other way and the league finds there's some, I'm not sure the technical word, but they find him not being in right standing, if you will, and he violated the league's policy of, just personal conduct, then I think that's where the Ravens will be like, you've got our license to adios. And so I think what you and I are saying in the statement that we're talking about now is like that would have been technically behind him. There's no persons that, really made a valid claim. And the Ravens are like, good. All right, well, the zero tolerance policy now, in our view, is come to a close. We got Justin Tucker on our team, and we're going to keep him, but we're going to have an open competition. And then, it's just game on from there. I think that's, there's so much going on. You just unfortunately can't see it right now. You just got to wait. And that's something that, people want to speculate and bring opinions. But until you know what you know, you got to sit back and just wait for the dust to settle. And I think for Eric DeCosta, if it is like a Deshaun Watson-esque type thing where it takes that long a period of time to come to a decision, well, then he's probably gonna have to draft somebody to cover himself, because that's the role of the general manager, to make sure the team is prepared and ready to go. And part of putting points on the board is kicking, and that kicking game has to be addressed one way or the other. So it's going to work itself out, but there's some challenges contract wise, challenges when it comes to the perception on the outside, and challenges within the locker room dynamically with Justin Tucker. I think there's going to be so much that goes on with it. It'll be interesting to see.
And that's the theme of the show here today. It's still ever evolving situation. And there are so many directions it can go, but obviously one way or the other, Q, you're right. The Ravens have to put somebody out there to kick footballs in 2025, whether that is Justin Tucker, or if it's not Justin Tucker, someone that they bring in probably through the draft. So we'll see how it all unfolds. But coming up in the final part of the show, the combine is in full swing now. First set of drills happened yesterday with the defensive linemen, and we're going to be talking about what Baltimore should be looking for at the combine in Q's combine experiences. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher with Qadry Ismail and Q. The Combine, or the Underwear Olympics, as they are otherwise known as. I know we've had that conversation plenty here on this show. Drill started up yesterday. Defensive linemen did their thing. And by the way, there were multiple standouts. Guys like, and someone I've talked about on the show before, Darius Alexander out of Toledo at a 1.72 second 10-yard split. You had guys who were potential first-round picks like Derrick Harmon from Oregon, who did really well. Ty Robinson might have been the story of the day, who had a 1.71 second 10-yard split. That led the entire group. So this defensive line class already is projected to have so much talent in it. You could get a guy in the third round this year that might be a late first-round prospect because of how deep this class is. But the combine is always, it's evaluated differently by different teams. Some people put a lot of stock into those drills, other teams not so much. And again, the combine's been ever evolving. So obviously when you went through this process, Q, back all those years ago, it's a lot different than what it is today. I know you and I were talking a little bit about before the show how different it is, and guys not opting to throw or participate and wait for their pro days and whatnot. So I'm curious, from your experiences back when you were doing your pro days, combines and whatnot, to what it has evolved into today, what are you kind of looking at is different?
I think for the combines, the eyes that are on the player, like it had, when I say Underwear Olympics, like, my goodness, man, everything is just dissected and looked at. And yes, there were performance coaches that broke it down somewhat back in the day. Then it became a cottage industry of training in that early 2000s, mid 2000s. But then the NFL Players Association, they cut the fees of the agent. And then obviously you had it where you no longer had holdouts because there was a rookie pool of money that you were going to use to sign your players. And so then that just pretty much took a lot of the holdouts, the Sam Bradfords of the world, out of the equation. And so you wound up getting, these underwear Olympics in a different light. Like off-season training, guys would be like, all right, great, here we go. We got, you're gonna pay, the agent's gonna pay the performance coach about $30,000 to $50,000 for these underwear Olympics for them to go out there and perform. Now you still might have some of those guys. I mean, the prices have certainly dropped, and the agent's like, man, I'm not going to, pay all that for, a guy that, first round, I'm not getting the first round money. I'm not recouping all that. So the dynamic has certainly changed in that regards. But I just think that, from the wear of the clothes to the shoes to all the little, details that go into from a technology base to get the guy to squeeze every ounce of athleticism out of him. But again, it's the underwear Olympics, and none of it really matters. I mean, yeah, a scout would be like, oh, what do you mean it doesn't matter? No, it really doesn't, because ultimately, can a guy play football? This doesn't have anything to do with the guy playing football. Can a head coach, can a position coach, can people look at that particular guy and say, man, I see that you can assimilate information, and judging by the way your film is, but judging by your personality, meeting you up close and personal, this fits for our ball club. That really, in my mind, is more important than the underwear Olympics. But that's the world we live in terms of the evaluation process.
And every team has things that they're looking for. Baltimore will certainly have their things as well. Obviously, they're not too caught up in the drills, because if they were, Kyle Hamilton would not be a member of the Ravens right now based off of how his 40 time went, and teams dropping him on their boards based off of that. But, Baltimore right now, defensive line is a place that they could look at. We've talked about building the trenches up with guards. Eric DeCosta, John Harbaugh talked about the offensive line. I've talked about that multiple times this offseason. So I think that that's an area where they could be looking at. But it shouldn't be just as black and white as, oh, this guy didn't perform well in this drill, let's just cross him off the board. There's so much more that goes into it. And plus, just for the example of the 40-yard dash with Kyle Hamilton, how many times does Kyle Hamilton has to run 40 yards in a straight line? Like, there is so much other stuff that goes into it. The combine is a little event in a very holistic process of evaluating a prospect. So we'll see what the Ravens end up looking for. But again, some of those needs the Ravens will certainly be looking at, and that could be a lot of different things for this Baltimore team, even when it comes to some backup positions as well. Q, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hopping on quickly. Did you see the NFL report cards? John Harbaugh got 28 out of 32 on the head coach rating. He got a B. Steve Bisciotti got 9th, that whole situation. So I wanted to ask if you saw that, but also tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, I saw it. I think it's interesting how year to year you got to continue to do your absolute best as an organization, because, I guess if you're the Bills, as good as you thought you were, you still got an F- in your travel. That is crazy. That means something. So, yes, from a bigger picture aspect of things, the Ravens kind of disappointed that they got just a mid-level grade where they were saying taking care of family. Boy, that's something where I think that they'll address and kind of figure out better ways to help, the families and all the things. But missile training is what I do and love and have a passion for. MissileTraining.com is where you can go and interact with me. It is a training system and program that is designed to help you with your human movement and sports performance. Doesn't matter the age, whether you're 6 all the way up to my oldest client, 85. Movement is life. Recovery is life. Opportunities for yourself to get better. If you're a team looking to get better also, we can meet your needs and help you achieve your fitness goals. missiletraining.com. Of course, when it comes to the media, WJZ is where you can find me. But more importantly, in the off season, you're going to find me each and every week on Locked On Ravens with my guy, Kevin Oestreicher, right here on this channel. What up? We bring you all Raven content all off season long.
Yeah, you know we do. Q's, links all in the description down below. And of course, like he just said, you can catch him here every single week on Locked On Ravens. Q, appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody who tuned in, watched, listened to the show today. On the way out, hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up, we'll take a little 2-day break, but we'll be back on Monday. Unless there are any other crazy headlines, who knows? Maybe Ronnie Stanley signs this weekend. We got to go live again. I don't know how that's going to work out, but regardless, see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.